strolling through the night with a grin so sly, mustache so wicked it'll catch your eye. Critics can chatter but they missin' the flair. Orlok's in the building, best beware.
Nosferatu!
Of course he has a mustache. He's based on Dracula.
It's historically accurate. Don't you realize that?
You're dumb if you don't like the mustache.
This is literally what the comment section of my last 2 Nosferatu videos looks like. And keep in mind, I love the mustached look of Orlok, but I'm also a 1922 Orlok purist, to an extent. So today I thought we would take a gander at not only the most annoying subsection of vampire purists, those who think Dracula and Orlok are one and the same, but also examining the actual differences between the 2 iconic vampires. But before you storm the comment section with your pitchforks, let me just remind you again that I loved the look of Orlok in Nosferatu 24. Let's begin. Today, boils and ghouls, we stand at the crossroads of tradition and innovation, discussing a figure that has haunted the silver screen since the silent echoes of 1922, Count Orlok. With the arrival of the 2024 adaptation of Nosferatu, a new visage of this iconic character has emerged, igniting debates and passions alike. The new Orlok, with a surprising addition, a thick, defining mustache, has stirred up quite the controversy among vampire fans, and I confess, upon first hearing of this design choice, skepticism took hold of me. How could such a traditional, almost cliched feature belong on the face of cinema's most unearthly vampire? Yet, when I saw the film, something unexpected happened. I was captivated. The mustache did not detract, but rather added a layer of depth and intrigue, lending a human-like vanity to a creature that should be anything but human. However, despite my newfound appreciation, my love for Nosferatu and Count Orlok still belongs to the versions first presented to us back in 1922. I personally remember those days fondly. Regarding the 1922 Orlok, there's an unmatched purity in his nearly hairless, gaunt appearance, with those rodent-like fangs and bat-like ears that create a visage so alien, so otherworldly, it chills you to the bone. This is the Orlok that first crept into the nightmares of viewers, an embodiment of the plague-bearing, shadow-lurking terror of the night. And yet, why should we not cherish both renditions? Why must our affections be exclusive to one interpretation over the other? Art, after all, is an ever-evolving beast, much like the legends of the vampires themselves. And these aren't even the only 2 versions that exist. We of course have the Klaus Kinski versions, and Kinski didn't even really play Orlok in the first film. He played a version of Dracula that just looked like Orlok. At least in the first movie, but that's a conversation for another day. We have the Orlok-adjacent Kurt Barlow as seen in Salem's Lot and its HBO Max remake. We have the Orlok-adjacent Peter from What We Do in the Shadows. We have William Dafoe playing Max Schreck in Shadow of the Vampire. And of course, we have the Doug Jones Orlok from the 2023 version of Nosferatu. Plenty of Orloks to go around, but with one point of interest. Most of them shared a consistent look and design, with the exception, of course, the mustached 2024 Bill Skarsgård version, and maybe the long-haired version of Nosferatu in Venice. However, the discourse surrounding our new 2024 mustached Orlok has taken a peculiar turn, one that I find to be both fascinating and frustrating. Many argue that this Orlok's mustache is a nod to Bram Stoker's original Dracula, a nobleman with a mustache, as Stoker described. Yes, it is true that Dracula was depicted with such facial hair, and yes, it is historically accurate for a man of his supposed station in Transylvania. But here's the rub. The 1922 Nosferatu was never a faithful adaptation of Stoker's Dracula. It was an unauthorized reimagining, born out of necessity and creative defiance. Count Orlok was not Count Dracula. He was something else entirely, a sinister creation that should not be shackled to the literary bounds of Stoker's work. The insistence from many on justifying Orlok's mustache solely through the lens of Stoker's novel strikes me as not only a misunderstanding, but a limitation of artistic expression. Orlok is not, and should not be, a mirror of Dracula, at least in my humble opinion. And again, I loved the mustache, but I also think Orlok should be his own thing, not 1 or 2 steps away from Dracula himself, and not necessarily tied to historical Transylvanian accuracy, and so on and so forth. So, to those who defend the mustache solely for its literary allegiance to Bram Stoker's source material, I pose this question: why should Orlok conform to the expectations set by another character entirely? Orlok should be wild and feral, a creature of darkness that defies human norms and expectations, not one that aligns with them. The addition of the mustache in 2024's Nosferatu should be seen not just as a nod to historical accuracy or a concealment of monstrous teeth, but as a choice, an artistic decision that adds complexity to an iconic figure, and not one made because of the fact that, as so many of you have told me time and time again, well, Dracula has a mustache in the book, so you're wrong. Eggers didn't slap a mustache on Orlok because Bram Stoker's Dracula said so. He did it to embrace history, not to be shackled by somebody else's creative liberties. Back in the day, vampires weren't seductive immortals. They were rotting, putrid corpses, terrifying in their grotesque reality. Eggers leaned into the raw, grimy authenticity of a dead Transylvanian nobleman, because historically, Transylvanian nobles had to rock a mustache. It wasn't just a style, it was practically their cultural signature. And yes, it does tie back to Vlad the Impaler, the historical figure, not the vampire he inspired in Dracula, whose mustache is immortalized in every historical depiction. Eggers wanted to pull from centuries of folklore and history, not just rehash what Stoker imagined in his book, creating a vision of vampires that's true to their decayed, unsettling roots that are not dictated by the original Dracula novel. And I'm not saying every version of Orlok should look 100% alike, just like Dracula shouldn't look 100% the same all the time either. But what I'm saying is this: let Count Orlok be Count Orlok. Not Count Dracula, but Orlok. And while the 2024 Nosferatu does offer a fresh interpretation of the character with visibly decomposing skin and a thick mustache, I would like to think that this is simply because Eggers was trying to dabble in history and authenticity, rather than trying to appeal to the Bram Stoker source material, or Count Dracula himself. So with all that said, let's get one thing straight. The 1922 Orlok is the definitive, untouched icon of horror, and that's where the purity of his terror lies. I love the 2024 revamp, mustache and all, but let's not kid ourselves. Defending this choice just because it mimics Stoker's Dracula is ludicrous. We're talking about a character born from the need to skirt copyright laws, not a faithful book adaptation. So love the new look for what it is, a fresh, daring twist, not one made because it tickles some kind of misplaced literary loyalty. It's nonsense. So for everybody in the comments section saying, well, it's actually based on Count Dracula, and he was a Transylvanian nobleman, so the mustache makes all kinds of sense since Count Orlok was inspired by Dracula, please sit down and shut up.
mustache so fly makes the ladies all sing. They say he's just a copy of that vampire named Pete, but Orlok got swagger, y'all, can't you see? Mustache on point, man, as sharp as a tack. Not just a shadow, it's got its own knack. Dracula who, man, it's not a game. Orlok stepping out, putting stashes to shame. Fangs in the moonlight, but it's all about the stash. Twisting those ends, got the undead cash. Say he's biting styles, but they got it all wrong. This ain't no pale imitation, it's where it belongs. Mustache on point, man, as sharp as a tack. Not just a shadow, it's got its own knack. Dracula who, man, it's not a game. Orlok stepping out, putting stashes to shame. Reeling through the night with a grin so sly. Mustache so wicked it'll catch your eye. Critics can't chatter, but they missing the flair. Orlok's in the building, best beware.